All right, so what's cracking for you guys this week?
This week, we are talking all about the Olympics. So we've been tuning in for a lot more of that as Australia has been locked down a fair bit. So all about the Olympics.
Awesome. All right, let's get into it. So obviously, Tokyo 2020 is happening right now, taking place in 2021 for obvious reasons, kind of probably one of the starker differences that we're noticing is that there's no fans in stands, right? And people are kind of really feeling that loss, both athletes and fans and teams, nations, everybody. So what is it kind of about sports that generates that sense of connection and community, maybe more so than other things? Because there's still a lot of places where those kind of social things aren't back, but this kind of loss around sports feels really strong for a lot of people. So can you speak a bit to kind of what that loss is and what that kind of fan community is like and why there's such a kind of loss right now for so many folks?
I think that the lockdowns have kind of given people the Olympics have given people a sense of hope. It's been a bit of a crazy time for a lot of countries. So I think this is something for people to look forward to long for and support their countries. It's been the key thing.
Yeah, I got to agree with you, Kel. I think in New South Wales, obviously it's the state's locked down a little bit more, but it's definitely been something for people to not just to occupy time, but to really find a bit of an emotional connection with as well. I mean, personally, I've noticed with this Olympics, the athlete stories have really come to the fore. I think Channel 7 as a host broadcaster locally have done a fantastic job with that. I think when you start off with, the swimming in the first week, Ariana Titmus or Emily McKeown, just both of those athletes really just absolutely rising and the nation really attaching themselves to that. I've probably jumped on to watch a little bit more Olympics in the second week more recently with the athletics and like stories like Peter Bowles tonight, been the first sort of athlete we've had in an 800 metres final in about 50 odd years. Just been really exciting. And even like personally myself just find myself watching sports that I wouldn't have watched, like, getting really excited about the high jump. All of a sudden it's, 11 o'clock at night, but I've got a tape measure out measuring how high that actually is. So I think it's really given people something to get really excited about and get behind as well.
I agree, right? There's that huge sense of kind of pride and a shared connection between your country and all these things, and something you can really get behind and something to look forward to, right? It only happens every 4 years, 5 years, I guess, this year. So definitely that positivity for a lot of people, right?
Definitely.
So how are folks kind of staying connected, right? We're not totally removed from it. It's just, we're distanced. What are we kind of seeing from teams or organizations to try and bridge that gap as best as they can?
Yeah, I think the Olympics have got a pretty cool fan zone online at the moment where you can do some fantasy picking, who's sort of tipping and things like that, which has been pretty cool to see. But down here, we've also seen Woolworths jump on board with an Aussie Heroes sticker collection. So you get to learn about the athletes and sports and the rules of the games, which has been really cool. I think just trying to keep those fans occupied digitally has probably been the most important thing. We've seen on sort of Twitter and Facebook of more people staying engaged through there and seeing how many events are actually trending that, as Tim said, we don't necessarily hear about regularly. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, I've found Twitter's definitely been my go-to when it comes to sort of staying connected for the game. So I think it's been really good. I've actually been able to discover a little bit more around, some of those athlete stories that we talked about, but also like some more of those unheralded sort of sports through Twitter for sure. It's definitely been a bit of a go-to to find out what's been shown when as well. But obviously, I think the availability of a lot of sports just with the way Channel 7 have set up their streaming and broadcast has been fantastic as well. Just being able to tune into any sport at any stage or have it on in the background during your work day to be able to tune in is a real plus as well. And it's continued to sort of just help people feel a little bit more connected to one another and to those different sports. And I think that it's probably also something to factor into that is the time zone difference as well. For us locally here, the Japanese time zone being an hour behind has just been fantastic. And when you think about previous games back to sort of to Rio or to London, you'd be tuning in the middle of the night. So it becomes a little bit harder to have that connection as well. So the time zone's definitely been a real plus locally.
Yeah, I'm feeling some of the negative sides of the time zones. I'm missing it for a bit, but I try and catch it where I can. But now, do you think that kind of ease of broadcast and the kind of it's easy to find those things is amplified this year because they knew that we were so distant? And you think there's kind of more of a push to make it more accessible? You know, I know it's been a few years since our last one and we watched it. Maybe our memories aren't that good, but I feel like this year, although the time change is difficult, it's everywhere this year, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Amy. I feel like there's a couple of things that factor into that. People are more tuned into technology and the way that they actually have an ability to stream things. People are conditioned, I suppose would be the right sort of word. Again, you've got different broadcasters down here who have really refined their product when it comes to live streaming major events. So when you think about things like the Australian Open, where you've got multiple events happening at the same time, people have sort of become used to having that availability to tune in to see a particular match or a particular sport, know where to go, know that they need to sign up for a particular app, for example, and what data they need to kind of give across in order to be able to access that. So it's not really too much of a reach for people. So that's enabled them to stay a lot more kind of connected, knowing that they've got that option as well. And then I think the second part is the social element to it as well, and just people being exposed to sports or stories or knowing when things are on, and being able to go and find out that information super quickly, but also then having a bit of a groundswell of momentum when I don't know, like, you know, Logan Martin's, gold medal BMX run is on, for example. And that's something I probably wouldn't have, tuned into, but I happened to see it on Twitter. And so I was, right there, tuned in for it, and was able to do that really quickly just because I saw that it was coming up. So that's sort of, I think, opened people's eyes a little bit and helped them to be able to see a little bit more.
And I think broadcasters had to sort of adapt to it. I think the on-demand, the on-demand media that people have been sort of requesting, it's almost an expectation now for a lot of fans. So it's definitely increased the need for it.
Yeah, absolutely. People sort of expect that, and I think that shows in some of the streaming numbers. I was looking up the other day. This has been by far and away Seven's most successful Olympics ever, which you'd expect, but by pretty much one of their most successful major events ever in terms of the number of hours total streams, and the number of eyeballs in terms of people watching it as well.
Wow.
Gone are the days of one channel having just one Olympic stream. You can watch any sport anytime now.
Can't do it. And even when you're watching on TV, just like, I don't know if you find yourself cycling between 7-1, 7-2, 7-8, and just trying to jump between to see what's on as well. It's great having so many options there.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to wait for that one channel to broadcast something, right? We're like you said, it's so conditioned to having multiple channels, multiple options, anything you want, stream it digital, get it right now, right? So I guess it is kind of just a sign of the times, maybe not even amplified because of circumstance, but this is just where we are 4 years later, right? Like, this is just kind of how we function, how we consume things, right?
Yeah, that's it, for sure. Perfect.
So kind of staying on the tech theme, obviously Tradable Bits, where we live in the tech space, these are things that we pay attention to, and we've kind of noticed how Tokyo 2020 has really brought in a lot of tech. We're seeing a lot of kind of cool stuff, both from the athletic side, talking about kind of wearable products, and then also the robots are everywhere, right? They're kind of replacing some of the human contact and things like that. So what do you guys think, how does that change the nature of the games, the human nature of the games, kind of pros or cons, or kind of any of the tradition of the games? Are they at all affected by this kind of the rise of technology and implementation that we're seeing at these Olympic Games this year?
I think if any country is going to show off their technology, it's going to be Japan for sure. But I think it's been really interesting to see sort of, I guess, the robots that have been implemented to try and minimize that human contact. I was watching the hammer throw the other day, and this robot went along, picked up the hammer throw and took it back to the athletes. And that's obviously to minimize the contact between sort of the officials and the athletes. But it was such a weird sort of thing to see. And I thought it was super cool, but I had to be reminded that was probably someone's job. 4 years ago. So it is really interesting to see how these, I guess, COVID's had to sort of force people to change and minimize that contact. But also wanted to shout out to that halftime robot that shot the three-pointer at the USA basketball halftime.
A little bit of entertainment factor that comes into it there as well, which is awesome. Look, I haven't noticed too much. I suppose the robot element, they kind of bob up occasionally, which I've seen. The thing that stood out for me has been a few of the, technology improvements or features from a broadcast perspective, but also then in stadium. I really liked some of the overlays that I've seen in broadcasts where they bring statistics to the fore a little bit and bring some sort of snapshot stats that people can use when they're actually viewing it. So the swimming for the first time had a trailing stat where you could actually see the speed at which the swimmer was going, how many meters per second that they were traveling. That sort of element as an overlay is, you've seen it in a lot of sort of North American broadcast sports and even sort of locally, maybe with AFL starting to come in, but that really adds to the viewing experience. It's just a small thing that kind of gives you it helps the viewer realize, how supreme these athletes are, how fast they're actually going, and really just enhances the viewing experience. And I think subconsciously people mightn't even notice the benefit for that, but that's the kind of thing that just becomes the expected standard when you're watching live sport as well. The other thing I think, if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend people go look up, is the introduction for the 100-meter final for both the men's and women's. Absolutely amazing in-stadium light show, broadcasting some basically like vision onto the actual track. They darken the entire stadium and do an entire intro piece that featured countries' flags, the names of the runners, all animated. Really similar to what you'd see in an NHL hockey match, where it was sort of broadcast onto the ice. Just visually spectacular, really adds to the theatre of the actual viewing experience as well, both in stadium, which unfortunately there was no one there to see it live, but from a broadcast perspective, watching at home, it was just amazing.
That would be pretty spectacular to see. I think the word you use, theater, really hits it, right? And it translates well across broadcast, even for us to not be there, but to still kind of see that over the TV still looks pretty incredible, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think anything that enhances the viewing experience at home is just terrific. But I suppose the last element, and this kind of came to me just on your question around one of the things that's been a little bit, I suppose, sad to see is the lack of human contact. When people are being awarded their medals, but the flip side to that was that at least there's been a nice sort of element where a lot of athletes have been able to award one another their medals, which is kind of a nice touch. And I'm actually wondering whether that might be something that actually stays into the next games as well. It's been a sort of a nice touch to see the emotion and the joy that's kind of come from teammates or competitors being able to award one another medals and take that process that's normally being done by an official as well.
That's nice to see, because they're in there together, and it's to share that moment. And I've seen some stuff between athletes where they actually are kind of sharing that moment. I believe there was these two athletes recently that actually shared a gold medal to kind of bring that between your competitors and have that moment together. I think is really, really nice, actually. So, all right, so we'll kind of bring it back local to you guys in Australia, so unfortunately you guys have taken a bit of another lockdown back at home. So what does that mean for, sports in Australia right now? Kind of how are teams doing? How are fans doing? What does this all mean for you guys in terms of your local sports there in Australia?
Yeah, I think recently in the last sort of week or so, it's been nothing but chaos, to be quite honest. We've seen teams being diverted mid-air because of state lockdowns. We've seen sort of really last-minute changes to fixtures. So we've seen football games delayed. We've seen games postponed altogether. So it's been really hectic from a team perspective. And the admin teams that are keeping it alive have been absolutely amazing to try and work overtime to keep it going. But to say it's crazy is probably the easiest way to describe it. Yeah,
that's spot on, Kel. And I think it's not new to the sports. It's something that's been going on for the best part of 18 months now. But I think more recently, we're seeing shorter, sharper lockdowns from a lot of states as the Delta variant kind of takes hold, and states are trying to protect and avoid that really breaking out. The first time around, I think it really affected fans more. It was an inability to actually get to games. And the second time around, though, it's really taking a toll on the teams, like you said, just with the constant changes and moves of fixturing, which would be incredibly difficult. They seem to have taken it all in their stride, and I think it's just amazing to see the work that the governing bodies are doing across major codes to adapt like that as well. And we've seen a lot of partners of ours really adapt quite well as well, and pivot to keep their fans connected and keep their teams connected to their fans as well. So, implementing things like message boards really nicely, giving fans a chance to send sort of videos or written messages to the team. I've also seen some, really fantastic and creative use of some of our tradable bids templates to allow fans to kind of connect and stay a part of the fan and match day experience with the teams that they support as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, like you said, it's not new anymore. It's been a bit of a long ride. People are unfortunately getting a little good at this kind of stuff and figuring it out, I guess. But kind of what are you seeing from teams in terms of resilience? You kind of mentioned the creativity, right, and stuff. How are they adapting? If you're an Australian club right now, kind of what does this mean for you, or kind of what's the plan out of here?
I think most clubs are just almost taking it in stride. It's just become such a big part of the world that we're in at the moment, and you sort of have to be prepared to change at the drop of a hat. So we have seen some really cool sort of resilience from our clubs in terms of the netball in particular. They've been sort of supporting each other through their quarantine periods and their lockdowns. So there has been some positivity come out of it. Even crosstown rivals have been supporting each other through online, sort of keeping each other entertained during lockdown, keeping the families sort of entertained with kids, giving out, colouring in books and things like that. So in amongst all the negativity, there has been some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think it's been really good to see teams adapt and I suppose be pretty nimble where possible. I've noticed personally that there's been an increase in just sort of like over communication from a lot of teams, just really looking to try keep their fans involved, but also in the loop on particular changes. I think that's something that's been learnt out of, as we talked about the past 18 months of experience, that keeping fans engaged and keeping them in the loop with different changes and what's going on really is quite beneficial in the long run. And I think sort of clubs have learnt a lot from that as well. And I think the other thing that sort of plays into this, and that with a few of these states, it's probably only for the shorter term, and that there is a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, I think for most of the states here, in terms of being able to be back in the stands and having fans at games, and being able to play in front of at their home stadiums in front of their own fans as well. And fans actually sort of see that and see that there's a bit of an opportunity to get back and see the players and teams that they love soon as well.
The light at the tunnel, that's just, you got to hold on to that, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only way to be, and I think that's bringing it back to what we were talking about earlier on, is that emotional connection that gives people a little bit of hope and a little bit of excitement in their day, coming from the teams that they love or the players that they love as well.
Absolutely. I think, sports has always been such an entertainment for people and something that people get excited about. And so even though it's not the same, the fact that continues and that perseveres in some mode is still really that light at the tunnel that people needed then, and we still need now, and will continue to. So that's as long as that's still out there, I think that is going to hold up for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a distraction away from sort of the negativity.
Absolutely. All right, if there's anything else that either you want to add on the topic of Olympics or Australia, sports, lockdown, anything else, I would love to ask you those questions now. Otherwise, that is all the questions I have for you guys, and I thank you so much for chatting with me today.
No problem.
Thanks a lot, Amy.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to This Week in Fan Marketing. Make sure to come back and join us as we talk about all the latest trends in the world of sport and entertainment next time.